You were part of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal in 2013, where they were warning, and you were warning against Comey being made the director. What was it that you saw back then?
Oh my goodness. All you had to do was look at Comey's career up to then at the Department of Justice, where he'd held various senior officials, to know that this guy was an egoist, that he was someone who didn't believe the rules applied to him. And he was a showboater. There was that famous episode where he and Bob Mueller threatened to resign over some Bush surveillance programs that they had put in place. And there was the whole hospital bed moment where he went into the attorney general. And I think what was concerning was not just that we heard this tale, but that Comey loved to recount it, which said something about his
Yeah.
his attitude. So, you put someone like that in charge of one of the most clandestine organizations in the world, powerful organizations in the world. What do you think is going to happen? And by the way, this is a guy who's now been the subject of no fewer than 3 IG reports that have variously called him guilty of insubordination, of engaging in dangerous behavior, and then this most recent one where he oversaw an organization that willfully manipulated and abused a surveillance court.
So, how do we fix this, Kim? I mean, we don't have faith in any of our institutions anymore. We don't know our own history, so nobody's really pulling back and saying, hey, we have the solution. It's called the Constitution. Nobody's being held responsible. Hillary has the gall to go on stage in the last few days and say, no one in this country should be above the law. I mean, I don't know how much I can take before I just have an aneurysm. How do we solve this? How do we get back to where at least the majority of the country says, this is craziness, it's got to stop?
Well, one thing I always tell people, because I get asked this question a lot too, like, what do we do? And I always try to remind people, and I mentioned it in my book too, that the only way we can hold officials accountable and demand better is to actually hold them accountable in the place where we do it, which is at the
Right.
ballot box. And my frustration sometimes, I love America, I love the American people, but I wish that Americans would apply the same level of scrutiny that they do to, the deals on Amazon that they get, to, state elections, local elections, federal elections, and to make sure that we get some people in office that really are going to stand by their principles. I mean, look, Jim Comey, when he was nominated, was waved through the Senate. That's a failure in my book of the senators who voted for him, given the history of this guy, given the warnings that people had made. And so they need to be held accountable too. I've been really reassured by Bill Barr. To me, it's really rare that you get a guy who came from an institution is willing to go back and acknowledge that there are deep flaws and do something about it.
Mhm.
And that's why you see Democrats engaged in this delegitimization campaign against him and John Durham, because that's exactly the kind of behavior they don't want to see in government.